Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the public hearing for the Planning and Zoning Commission for Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022. If everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like the secretary to read the public notice.
Good evening. To be published in the Journal Inquirer Thursday, March 10, 2022, and Thursday, March 17, 2022, South Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission. Notice is hereby given that there will be a public hearing on Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022 at 7 p.m. in the council chambers of the South Windsor Town Hall to consider the following. 1. Application 22-03P, Kathy Kerrigan, request for a text zoning text change to add language to put in place an immediate one-year moratorium for the proposal of any new warehouse distribution centers to allow for zoning regulation changes to be put in place to address public concerns. To view this meeting, please tune into channel 16 if your provider is Cox Cable, or go to gmedia.swagit.com/live. Copies of the application are on file in the office of the town clerk and/or planning department, and online at https://www.southwindsor-ct.gov/planning department/pages/planning and zoning commission applications. At this hearing, interested persons may be heard, and written comments by the public will be received by mail or email. Persons who may require an accommodation can contact staff Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at 860-644-2511, extension 2329. Bart Passaconis, Chairman, Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Wagner. Our order of business tonight will be first to hear from our applicant, then we will hear from town staff, then we will hear from members of the public. First, those in favor, and then those against or having questions or concerns, and then we will hear from commissioners. We are light a couple commissioners tonight, so Commissioner Carey will be seated for Commissioner Viteri, and Commissioner Bernstein will be seated for Commissioner LeBlanc. At this time, I will call the applicant for 22-03P, Kathy Kerrigan. Good evening. Yeah, just push the button right in the light. Yep, you're on. Up, you're off. One more time. You got it. Okay, and I'd like to remind the public, when you do come up, if you want to speak, if you could please sign in, and we'll do the 3-minute time limits tonight. And if anybody would like to speak again afterwards, you're totally welcome to.
But I get more than 3.
Yeah, just make sure you.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
No?
No? Maybe tilt it down just a touch. No, just the very end. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, is that better?
No.
I'll speak louder.
Raise it up just a little. Okay. Thank you.
Testing.
Yeah. Just do your best to speak.
I'll just do my best.
Yeah.
Good. Let me know if I fade out. Good evening, Chairman Passaconis, commissioners, members of the public. For the record, my name is Kathy Kerrigan. I live at 1838 Main Street, and I've been a resident of South Windsor for 45 years. This presentation, a paper copy of which you have, is in defense of a zoning text amendment I submitted for review by the Planning and Zoning Commission in January. Let me begin by thanking the town staff for their help in drafting the text amendment, and my first, and in researching this presentation. Michelle Leip and Caitlin O'Neill in planning helped hugely. Mary Huda in the tax assessor's office, and Mike Maniscalco, our town manager. We're here tonight to talk about the pros and cons of this moratorium. We're here because the town has reached a tipping point, and the cumulative effects of multiple warehouse-type facilities are catching up with us. It's time to talk about taking a much-needed break from new warehouses, distribution centers, truck terminals, freight terminals, fulfillment centers. I was actually hoping that by this date, the whole topic of a moratorium would be a non-issue. The arguments supporting a moratorium are so compelling and becoming so evident everywhere. Oops. How do I get to the next slide? It's not. Really, really. Oh, Caitlin. It's because that's blocking it.
No, there was just, it was right click. Something happened.
Okay,
You're
great.
just using the arrow.
Okay, great, great. First, let me introduce myself. I am not affiliated with any political party. In fact, I've been officially unaffiliated for most of my voting life. I love to vote, and I vote in every election. I'm not angry. I'm not against growth. I'm not here to criticize our planning and zoning commissioners or our town council members. Hardly. I have great respect and appreciation for the hard work you all do. I'm not a town planner, and I'm certainly not an expert on all things zoning. I'm here tonight because I care about my neighborhood and my town, and I'm worried about the dramatic negative changes residents seem to be experiencing in a relatively short amount of time. I'm here because road traffic congestion and noise are beginning to impact neighborhoods all across town. I'm here because I see a problem. I think we might be able to fix it if we work together. I'm here because it's important that you understand why supporting this moratorium now makes sense for us all. Let's see if this works. I don't know, Caitlin, what am I doing or not doing? Maybe you should sit here.
When you're clicking, if you right click, that's what's going on. If you click on it,
Yeah,
so just click. Just click on
I
it.
swear to God I did that.
If you don't, just let me know.
Okay, great, 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 thank you. Okay, 3 things I'd like you to take away tonight. The first is that we have a problem with warehouse-type facilities. We're seeing it in objections raised against recent development projects, increased resident participation in town meetings, greater demands being placed on our zoning commissioners and town staff who support them, dramatic changes in traffic patterns and congestion, a marked increase in truck traffic, and a 24/7 elevation in noise levels. Second thing is we have a lot of questions relative to South Windsor's warehouse-type facilities. How many can we support? How many is too many? What exactly is the town getting in return for these facilities? What is the cumulative impact of multiple warehouse facilities in a short period of time? Is this a problem in neighboring towns? How are other towns responding? Are we making the most of our available industrial land? It's a limited resource. Thirdly, a 1-year moratorium on new warehouses and distribution facilities can help us better understand the problems we're facing and allow us the time needed to answer some of these pressing questions. Okay, let's start with some basic information on noise and noise levels, because this is really what brought me here. One way to measure noise or sound is in decibels. And starting at the bottom of this chart in the dark green is rainfall. We all know the sound of rainfall. Moving up to 60 is normal conversation or the dishwasher, 70 is a vacuum cleaner, 80 is an alarm clock. 85 is sort of a cutoff point. We know that sustained sound above 85 damages the human ear. When a tractor-trailer diesel truck accelerates, it can reach 90 decibels and higher. 90 decibels is 4 times louder than 70. The backup signal of a large dump truck type vehicle can reach 120 decibels. That's why they wear those things. And an improperly muffled truck jake braking can be as loud as 105 decibels, perhaps even louder. So why do these levels matter? We know there's a direct link between noise and health issues, including stress-related illnesses, high blood pressure, speech interference, hearing loss, sleep disruption, and lost productivity. Apparently, Paris has become inundated with noise. They call it acoustic aggression. A modified scooter crossing Paris at night can wake as many as 10,000 people. To try to fix the problem, the French are testing sound radar devices with cameras. The city will begin fining acoustic aggressors $150 per incident. I think it's a great idea. The story gives me hope for my neighborhood on the north end of Main Street near the intersection of Sullivan Avenue and Route 5. It's a neighborhood which has been devastated by noise. Our noisemakers are motorcycles, jazzed up passenger vehicles, utility vans, trucks, lots of trucks, and jake-breaking trucks. South Windsor's own acoustic aggression. We've learned the hard way that once the noise genie escapes, there's no getting it back into the bottle. The southwest part of town already suffers acoustically from I-291 and I-91 traffic, a constant buzz with occasional motorcycles or jake breakers adding to the litany. It's a backdrop for coyotes howling at night and all the other nature sounds folks living along the meadows of South Windsor cherish. But why so much new noise coming from Route 5, and why so suddenly? Why is it that I can no longer carry on a conversation with a neighbor on my back patio without having to yell? When did it happen? How did it happen? And then I read about Talbot Lane. Talbot Lane, just off Governor's Highway, is the location for another proposed regional distribution center. Neighbors living on lots abutting the property had organized to object to the project, rationally but passionately, presenting expert testimony, aiming to convince the Planning and Zoning Commission that this project was wrong. Wrong for the location, wrong for the neighborhoods immediately abutting the property, wrong for the town. My neighborhood is past help, I fear. But when my neighbors and I learned about Talbot Lane, we thought we might be able to help prevent yet another neighborhood being ruined. So in November, I did something I've never done before. I created an online petition asking for a moratorium on distribution centers, and I emailed it to a handful of friends. Within 72 hours, we received over 600 signatures from residents in town. And I have the printout showing the names of all of those people. I'd call that pretty solid evidence that there's support for a moratorium. Talbot Lane was a lightning rod, it had a galvanizing effect, especially the addition of 200 trucks a day onto Route 5, and the applicant's response to Chairman Pasakonis's wrenching question: if you knew that moving forward with this project could endanger the health of the residents abutting this property, would you do it? This application is in the courts now, and we need the town to present a strong case against the applicant. This is a project twice denied by Planning and Zoning. We need to watch it carefully. If you start to think about warehouses here in town and the traffic they generate, a look back is helpful. Aldi's arrived in 2009, just down the road from us on Rye Street. Many of us remember this property when it was 3 football fields of gorgeous farmed sod with a tiny farmhouse set off on one side and a couple of old tobacco barns. This is a big one. It's 482,000 square feet, and it sits on 106 acres. Then 3 years later, in 2012, FedEx set up its own massive ground distribution facility. Like Aldi's, this project had tall berms visually obscuring its mammoth size and scope. It's 304,249 square feet on 63 acres. And not long after, the noise levels and traffic levels began a steady rise and kept rising. We were starting to see and hear a big change. over a short period of time. Then in 2014, 40 acres of the Schweier family land on Sullivan Avenue sold to Scannell Properties of Indiana. The property, which included a 19th century increased clap house, was rezoned for 3 new warehouses. This was a wake-up call for area residents who live literally just on the other side of the trees in that picture. We got together and took a close look at zoning regulations and the plan of conservation and develop, which had just been renewed in 2013. We talked to the mayor, we talked to the developer, the town council, the planning and zoning commission. We were worried about traffic congestion, noise, lights, quality of life issues that could change our neighborhood negatively and permanently. Scannell Properties of Indiana got a foothold in South Windsor here, and I'm here to say that every single one of our fears were actually underestimated, because here's what happened. This was the first of 5 Scannell projects, and it's pretty much in my backyard. It was approved in February of 2015. By May, Scannell had converted a huge chunk of Schweier farmland into a 292,000 square foot concrete block, 4 stories high, sitting on 16.4 acres. We saw Sullivan Avenue expand to 6 lanes of traffic and acquire a new traffic light at Rice Street. We saw Route 5 expand with additional turn lanes. And we watched more pieces of the Clap House front yard shaved off to accommodate the newly approved 53-foot tractor trailers trying to negotiate an unreasonably sharp right-hand turn from Route 5 onto Sullivan Avenue. Then in May of that same year came Vistar, also a Scannell project. It went in next door to Mobis. It's 176,763 square feet on 13.8 acres. This one uses refrigerator trucks. In 2017, Aldi's expanded. They added 170,000 square feet to its already nearly 500,000 square foot footprint, becoming the largest of our warehouse type facilities. Scannell shifted its attention to Ellington Road and built the Coca-Cola Distribution Center in October of 2018, 218,875 square feet, 25 acres. And then came the Home Depot Center just across the street from Coca-Cola. This one's 421,000 on 45.9 acres. Only this facility brings with it train traffic, as well as truck traffic. As people living near or needing to travel over the busy Chapel Road Route 5 intersection will tell you, you don't want to catch a stalled train and wait, sometimes 10, 15, 20 minutes for the track to clear and the traffic signals to begin to work again. And then the Amazon Distribution Center, 182,000 square feet, 13.7 acres. When will it open? It hasn't opened yet. What will it be? A distribution center, a fulfillment center? And how will yet another wave of motor vehicles, trucks, vans, cars, impact Ellington Road, the Chapel Road Route 5 intersection, the I-291 exit and entry ramps? So, 7 mega warehouse type facilities in 11 years. FedEx, Mobis, Vistar, Aldi's, Coca-Cola, Home Depot, Amazon. That's a lot for a small town. I know that our commissioners are well aware of all of these projects, but let's focus on what they add up to, what the cumulative effect is. We've got 7 centers covering 283.8 acres of land and 2,247,000 square feet of covered space. And it hit me. Taken together, all this new development has had a huge impact on our town. It's starting to look like our planning and zoning commissioners are literally being buried in applications, scrambling to review and respond in order to meet deadlines, searching current zoning regs to find reasons to say no to developments that don't feel right for the town, watching applications that meet current zoning regs sail through the process unchecked and unquestioned. Our P&Z commissioners are up against developers who know how to navigate our zoning regs to push ahead with projects, even when those projects may very well cause damage to the human beings working in them and living near them. The problem is that these centers come with a lot of trucks, all kinds of trucks, and employees and their modes of transportation. The problem is that all too often these warehouse-type facilities are built by people who don't live here, who have no stake in our quality of life, and who have no reason to care for the well-being of the residents of the town. All of these warehouses, this is what we've traded with developers, roughly 2.2 million square feet of warehouse-type space sitting on top of 284 almost acres of land, most of it farmland, all of it committed to industrial use. In case you just can't picture how big these are, imagine yourself standing in the middle of a football field. A football field is 57,600 feet. 2,247,000 square feet of warehouse space translates into 35 football fields in covered, often highly automated warehouse-type facilities. And what happens to these megastructures, custom-built for distribution centers and warehouses, when they're no longer needed or no longer deemed to be in the correct location? The arguments in favor of new warehouse-type facilities are obvious and pretty powerful. On the plus side, these centers expand our tax base. Always a good thing, because taxes generated by businesses generally offset taxes needed from residents to pay for town services. And they provide jobs to people in the region, although not necessarily here in South Windsor. And they don't traditionally add school-aged children to the local population. And I heard this from many sources, accepting new warehouse-type facilities promotes the town's reputation as a friendly place to do business, which has a favorable ripple effect through the town. Let's break those down. In exchange for millions of square feet of space and acres of farmland, no new school children and a good reputation, what exactly have we gotten back? How have these warehouse-type facilities helped the town with taxes? The answer is, I can't really tell you with any certainty or clarity what those taxes and job benefits are. It appears that tax abatements have been offered to all major developments, even though no one has been able to provide me with a written policy regarding who does and does not qualify for these tax abatements, or even a clear explanation of how they work. It seems to be a decision generated by the Economic Development Commission and the town manager, and then brought before the town council for approval. I wonder if it's become an expectation with no quid pro quo. I wonder to what degree the taxpayers of South Windsor are in fact subsidizing these warehouses. And how do our town manager and economic development commissioners feel about these warehouse-type facilities? If you want to know who currently has tax abatements, I urge you to check out the tax abatement dashboard on the Economic Development Commission's website. I'm not a numbers person, but the charts on this website seem especially difficult to make sense of. I suggest you all take a look at it and see what you think. And as to the town's reputation for being friendly to developers, seems like a double-edged sword to me. It can cut both ways. How friendly do we want and need to be? Face it, we're vulnerable. We're in a great location for warehouses. We're close to I-84, I-291, I-91. We have lovely flat farmland to build on. We have pretty good state roads, Route 5 and Sullivan Avenue. We've got a town staff that's easy to work with, a welcoming Economic Development Commission. We're generous with tax abatements and ask little in return. And best of all, we have a sort of sleepy public presence who rarely raises objections, asks questions, and at the moment, we're in the process of taking on a new town attorney, one who we hope will clearly and vigorously represent the voice of the PNC, but I'm feeling a little vulnerable. And what about jobs? What are the numbers and types? To the best of my knowledge, this is another fuzzy one, simply because we do not follow up on jobs data promised in applications. Applicants generally list the number of jobs promised in an application depending on the town's interest in seeing these numbers or the need to see them regarding parking places. There is no actual follow-up on the numbers of jobs created. I can remember a prior town manager stating that the people who would be filling jobs in the Mobus distribution center would be making good money, they'd be dining out at South Windsor restaurants, spending money in South Windsor stores, owning homes here in town. I don't know if any of that's materialized. What's promised? What's actually delivered? What kinds of jobs? Are they high-paying, and who's filling them? Local residents, commuters from other towns? We need to know, and we currently have no way of knowing for certain. It's not something we follow up on. The only time these questions may get asked is during an expansion project when a new application is filed. So, here are some equally important questions. Distribution centers generate a lot of vehicles. Talbot Lane alone would add an additional 200 tractor-trailer trucks daily to Route 5. I read recently that one tractor-trailer truck is equal to about 8,000 cars in terms of the impact on our roads. What about delivery vans and passenger vehicles used by employees and even truck drivers commuting to work? Think about the decibel level screen we looked at earlier. How do these increases in traffic translate into decibel levels? Think about the changes we've seen in traffic patterns. And what about pollution? Noise, light, particulate pollution from idling diesel trucks. The Pandora's box has been opened, and we're left with many questions and few answers. It's time for a reality check. What do we gain in return for these unquantifiable benefits? What are the hidden and not so hidden costs? I think we need to find out. We can't take back what's already happened to our town, to sections of our town. We can't issue sound-canceling headphones and respirators to every resident. We can't fix what's already happened to some neighborhoods with trees, berms, plantings, walls, water features, music. Believe me, I've researched them all and tried most of them. We could do more of this. We could also do this. We can make a start now and call for a one-year moratorium. We can press the pause button for 1 year and step back and start to answer some of those questions. Applications and projects already in the pipeline will not be impacted. We'll just place a hold on any new applications for warehouses and distribution centers. Why 1 year? I think we ask a lot of you commissioners. This is the way I see the work you do, from applications to planning with a lot in between. The number of applications you're reviewing now have to be on the rise. The number of public hearings associated with those applications also seem to be on the rise. Each application is new, each requires background prep. Commissioners must know the zoning regs and have a working knowledge of the plan of conservation and development. And you have limited staff to support your work, with some key members approaching retirement. Planning and zoning commissioners, as you well know, are elected volunteers who put in a tremendous amount of time and energy into jobs that they actually have to convince people to vote for. You spend countless hours poring over mind-numbing detail, listening to often mumbled and incoherent presentations by traffic specialists, environmental experts, legal counsel. you must increasingly be feeling pressure from developers to approve, from residents to protect, and from the town to avoid lawsuits. And there's a lot of money at stake with these projects and a lot of money behind them.
If everyone could please silence their cell phones. Thank you.
In 2007, zoning regs were reorganized and rewritten completely, and it was an expensive project, but I guess they did a great job. They're not cast in stone. Since then, 85 text changes have been approved. They're easy to track. They're in the appendix to the regulations posted on the town's website. The question is, when was the last time industrial zoning regs were looked at in depth and in light of recent experiences with development projects? The Plan of Conservation and Development was written in conjunction with town staff and residents. It was created in 2013. It's a really great document, and it's occasionally been updated via appendices, but it's in need of an overhaul. We need to broaden the conversation. We need to engage in discussions with residents, other commission members, such as the Economic Development Commission, elected town officials, town staff. How can we make the best possible use of our remaining industrial land? What can we do differently? First, we can arrange for the commissioners to talk to other towns, collect and digest studies. There are lots of them. They're easy to find. Once you start looking, they're everywhere, because this is a topic that's being talked about in every corner of this country and elsewhere. Review the most current data available. Talk to people about innovative and creative solutions to some of the problems we're experiencing. The experts are out there, and we are not alone. The Zoning Playbook, it's an open book, by the way, and it resides on the town's website. I have a copy of it on my desktop. It's how applicants and developers know what they need to do. It's what we take to court to support and back our decisions, back up decisions reached, because the town can be sued and threatened with lawsuits when things don't go a developer's way. Based on recent projects, it seems to me that some very specific zoning regs require a closer look today. Let's look at just a few. First, definitions. Warehouse, distribution center, fulfillment center, freight terminal, logistics facilities. Let's be clear about use. There are others, locations of distribution facilities, the ratio of land mass to the facility size, proximity to neighborhoods, buffers. Let's rethink road traffic studies and who conducts and pays for them. Let's research new construction materials that might help with noise abatement. Let's re-examine the rules regarding stormwater drainage, which are currently based on 100-year flood levels. Think back to the extraordinary flooding we've seen in recent years. Some would say that the 100-year flood level should be a 6-year flood level. And what about safety considerations for pedestrians and employees, like sidewalks? And there's more. I don't want to be an alarmist, but this is how I'd sum up the situation. We're working with aggressive developers who admittedly put their projects before the safety and well-being of residents. For some reason, we want to avoid looking unfriendly to those aggressive developers, who are not our friends, by the way. Our use of tax abatements is opaque at best. Tax benefits to the town from these facilities, or confidence that jobs offered by them are worthy, are not readily transparent. Both sides of the town council seem unwilling or unable to help residents understand that sometimes taxes have to go up for good reasons. A great school system, fantastic parks and open space, a senior center to be proud of, decent town roads, a well-staffed, helpful town hall, all take money. So the taxes we do collect from warehouse-type facilities are attractive. I get it. As a town, we're all in favor of protecting our quality of life, but remain unable to define it other than to grumble about its erosion. We have an expiring plan of conservation and development and outdated zoning regs. We've shown a willingness to sacrifice valuable industrial land that might be used more wisely, safely, and profitably. And worst of all, we have at best a foggy understanding of the impact of warehouse-type facilities on the environment, on the economy, on the population, and on the town's future. Oh, and by the way, have I already mentioned that we're facing planned retirements of key town support staff in town in the next few years? If we were smart and forward-thinking, we'd already have a moratorium in place. We'd have an economic development commission inviting speakers to talk to them about smart alternatives to warehouses. We'd have a united front on the warehouse issue from the mayor and town council on down through the town manager and the town planner and all of the various commissions and departments supporting the town. We wouldn't be unwittingly contradicting or undermining each other's efforts. We'd have a stated position, a solid reputation, a strong legal presence in the courts to fend off lawsuits aimed to steamroll projects through town. The millions we've added to our tax base may ironically be offset by the millions more the taxpayers in town will need to come up with to fund services to warehouses, including a lot of new blacktop on our roads, and remediation expenses to get our traffic straightened out and noise in neighborhoods reduced, to make our air a little bit cleaner and our job market a little bit more robust, to make sure residents in town enjoy the quality of life they want and deserve. Word is out. Warehouses are bad for towns, they're bad for local economies, they're bad for workers, they're bad for the environment, they're bad for the human population. I'll leave you to consider this. 5 years from now, we could be facing a giant exodus as work begins on reconstructing I-91 and I-84 in Hartford, and major interstates surrounding us become even messier. The tenants leasing these warehouse-type facilities may well begin to look for greener pastures elsewhere, or new technologies may take us to an altogether different plateau. We should probably start thinking now about how we might repurpose all those vacant football fields. If you'll remember at the start of this presentation, I said I hoped you'd take away 3 things: recognizing we have a problem, we got a lot of questions that need to be answered, and a 1-year moratorium makes sense. I hope you'll consider everything that I've said tonight and reach the right decision on this moratorium, because a moratorium needs to happen, and it needs to happen now, before surrounding towns come to the same conclusion, making us an even more attractive target. Thank you for listening. Special thank you to members of Planning and Zoning for looking out for the town, for understanding how quality of life issues touch all of us in South Windsor, neighbors, friends, family, even our elected officials. Thank you.
Excuse me, please have order. Thank you. At this time, we'll turn to our town staff, our Director of Planning, Michelle Leip.
Thank you. So this is a request for zoning text change to add language to put in place a immediate one-year moratorium on the proposal for any new warehouse distribution centers to allow time to create zoning regulations to address public concerns. I can state currently there are no warehouse distribution facility applications pending. However, if any applications were to be filed, they would be allowed to be filed prior to an effective date and would be under the current regulations. So just want Commission to be aware of that. The business development section of the town plan does have a specific goal that says attract additional business development that's consistent with the character and scale of its surroundings and with a strategy to maintain current business zones with updates. I think this supports the Commission's decision if they were to choose to look at a moratorium. You know, one of the things the commission is asked to do is, with any text amendment, to find a finding that it's consistent with your plan of conservation and development. The other thing you would be looking to do with any text amendment is to put an effective date for the text to be put in place, and then an effective date if it were 1 year later from that. We did send this off to CROG as required with any text amendment. I do have, for the record, CROG's report dated January 28th, 2022. The staff of the Regional Planning Commission, the Capital Region Council of Governments, has reviewed this zoning referral and finds no apparent conflict with regional plans and policies or the concerns of neighboring towns. I did take the text that was submitted, and I have formulated into a text amendment suggesting, similar to what we did with our housing moratorium, that we added to Article 1, introduction in the district section. I do have that wording that I'll hand out to the commission at the time of deliberations, kind of just tweaking the wording that was submitted by the applicant if you choose to go forward with a moratorium. And at that point, you could certainly edit that language or look to add anything to it at that point. That's all I have this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't see engineering, so I don't believe engineering has any comments? Okay. So at this time, do we have any, we'll turn to the public, do we have any letters to read into?
Yes, we do. I have here a letter from Peter Andrews of 80 Cody Circle. I understand he's asked that the commissioners consider his letter carefully, but not have it read into the record. So I'll respect that wish.
Okay, that is much appreciated.
Here's a letter from Derek Butler. My name is Derek Butler, and I reside at 596 Governor's Highway. I write in to support application 22-03P, and please extend it to applications for freight terminals, warehouses, and distribution center construction in town. I support a 12 to 24-month moratorium to give town officials time to update PZC rules and regulations to give appropriate balance between growth and quality of the life issues. This should include safety and public health concerns as well. The high volume of truck traffic and that these sites have produced is not safe, especially as many of these sites are in close proximity to residential neighborhoods. We need proper buffers. I include a couple pictures taken in recent weeks showing accidents, breakdowns, and other problems created as trailer drivers are running, in many cases, through neighborhoods and parking in no parking zones. This situation is created by insufficient staging areas at the facilities. No truck signage is not working. I started the early part of my career at Hartford Dispatch in East Hartford and was promoted to terminal manager in 1990s. At that time, East Hartford was overrun with warehouses and freight terminals, and that had devastating effects on that area when the firms closed. Remember James and Prospect Streets and Park Avenue in the 1990s? Hartford Dispatch had two divisions. One was the freight division with terminals throughout Connecticut and Mass. The moving and storage division primarily focused on storage and operated out of separate buildings. Back in the 1970s, there were two fatal accidents involving outside trucking companies running at night to warehouses in the Park Avenue, Prospect, and Prestige Park area. One involved a motorcycle, and the second was a neighborhood child on a bicycle. We should pause before something terrible happens in our town. A moratorium would allow officials time to assess and adjust PZC rules and regulations to provide a proper balance between growth, safety, and quality of life in town. Thank you kindly for your time and consideration, Derek Butler. And he has some pictures that commissioners can certainly look at. I'll read one more and then you can read a couple. This is a letter from Dan Turkington and Celine Kvetkauskas reference application 22-03P moratorium on warehouse and distribution center applications. Dear Commissioners, we strongly support the application for a moratorium on warehouse and distribution center applications. A moratorium would allow the Commission time to study noise and traffic regulations and how these regulations should be applied to industrial and commercial operations for zones within 1,500 feet of residential properties going forward. It would allow time to assess the current 100-foot buffer to residential abutters, as well as set limitations on types of industrial and commercial developments allowed within close proximity to residential properties. Additionally, the Inland Wetlands and Conservation Commission would have the opportunity to update their current regulations dating over 2 decades old. A moratorium will simultaneously allow the Commission boards to add provisions such as requiring applicants to pay for a third-party delineation concerning numerous aspects of an application. The traffic caused by many warehouses throughout town has nullified any tax benefits. The impact on our roads, watershed, and community well-being is stressed. The resources such large-scale warehouses consume have exhausted town land and threatens the scarce remains. As lifelong residents of South Windsor, please stand with us and help lead the movement to make necessary changes to zone regulations that will make a lasting positive impact on the community. And they signed sincerely.
We have a letter from Jim and Helene Clyburn. They reside at 35 Cody Circle. Dear Commissioners, greetings and a sincere thank you for your service during these challenging times. We have been proud residents of South Windsor for 46 years. Our family has grown and benefited from the wonderful education, recreation, and services provided to all the families in this beautiful town. That said, we are very concerned about the impact of the alarming growth that is happening in so many areas and the decisions that have led to increased congestion, truck and auto traffic, air, soil, and water pollution, and its health impact on all of us. All in all, decisions made by the various commissions and town council, we strongly believe, need to be thought through slowly and realistically, without political pressure or that of influential private planners and developers, to assess the collateral impact in our health, safety, and quality on the residents in residential neighborhoods and the direct and indirect cost, short and long-term, to the taxpayers. We strongly support Kathy Kerrigan's request and think that you and related commissions need to take a 12-month pause in order to review policy and regulations to our benefit and protection and look beyond our boundaries to find and integrate best practices into them. A moratorium would allow the Commissioner time to study whether noise regulations for the Buckland Gateway should be made applicable to industrial and commercial applications for land within 1,500 feet of residential property. Allow the Commission time to assess whether industrial or commercial land abutting residential land, whether the current 100-foot buffer split between the two types of land is reasonable when compared to other towns in Connecticut, where 150-foot buffers are required, all on industrial or commercial land. To allow time to determine whether limitations on the types of industrial development can occur when directly abutting residential land. For example, only light industrial uses could be considered. Allow Inland Wetlands and Conservation Commission to update its regulations, currently 21 years old, over 2 decades, and allow the Inland Wetlands and Conservation Commission to put in place regulations requiring the applicant to pay for the costs of a third-party delineation, as is common on other Connecticut towns. Again, respectfully yours, Jim and Helene Clyburn. What's the next one you have? This one?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. This next letter is from Jesse Giannamarino from 139 Julie Lane. Let's see, proposed moratorium. Please consider at what point in the P&Z process the fire marshal reviews site plans for these enormous warehouses. Not sure if the fire marshal would normally review plans before construction permitting, which obviously would be after P&Z plan acceptance. It occurred to me after a neighbor shared a news article about one of these distribution centers went up in flames and affected 4 counties. Please consider this as part of a mandatory site plan acceptance for buildings over a certain amount of square footage that would require a water tower and possible external diesel pump building. These are not shown or were not shown on the application for 25 Talbot Lane. Would this building require it based on the available water supply on Governor's Highway?
Okay, you want me to pick it up from here?
Yes, please.
This letter is from Jim and Helen Clyburn. You read that? Okay, wait a minute. Are we out of letters? Oh, okay, they had a separate letter. Okay. Dear Commissioners, greetings and a sincere thank you for your service during these challenging times. To Commissioner Wagner, I wanted to say that during my career I was trained to do investigations into serious safety incidences, and when I heard Attorney Connor answer your question as he did, I was immediately reminded that when asking questions, if a person answers a question but not the one asked, that is the intentional deflecting so as to avoid the truth. Thank you for catching that and getting the answer, which in my opinion answers the deeper question as to whether the developer and the designer's company cares at all about the town, its neighborhoods, and people living here. First, do no harm. Governor Lamont just announced that he's looking at strengthening the standards for truck emissions. The effect to air quality and ground and noise pollution will be staggering, and it will be harmful. Increased traffic on neighborhood streets with backups and idling poisons our children, grandchildren, and you. Do the right thing. Consumer Reports has a national community forum centering on the detrimental effects of Amazon warehouse distribution centers across the country. It's not just a Talbot Lane, Governor's Highway issue, but one this beautiful town should avoid. Warehouses and distribution centers are moving toward as much automation as they can, and so the promise of jobs is only words. As to businesses, Amazon and others have not lived here for 46 years. They will close if the money isn't there, leaving empty buildings and destroyed land. Look at Sullivan Avenue retail businesses, the mall, and Evergreen Walk, in spite of promises and recent rearrangement to salvage it. Aldi's, Whole Foods, and Costco, all in a very small radius and selling food, while Geisler's, a longtime member of this community, awaits a ventilator. Many of this town's children, many of the adults still living here, grew up and working here. The cost of the town to build and maintain the roads will be in the millions. The schools will be pushed even further, affecting the long-standing quality of educational life here. We say again that we are very concerned about the impact of the alarming growth that is happening in so many areas. All in all, decisions made by the various commissioners and town council, we strongly believe the need to be thought through slowly and realistically, without town hall or political pressure or that of influential private planners and developers, to assess the collateral impact, health and safety and quality on the residents and residential neighborhoods, and the direct and indirect costs, short and long term, to the taxpayers. I strongly support a 12-month pause in order to review all the related commission policies and regulations to our benefit and protection, and look beyond our boundaries to find and integrate the best practices into them. And there's an attachment here. Okay, do we have any others? I think we've got all the letters then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve and Stephanie. Okay, at this time, I am going to open it up to the members of the public. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this application? Please step forward. And I'll remind you, please sign in. And if you could, try to keep your comments brief and try not to rehash anything that's already been said.
Well, you just read the 2 letters, one I sent quite a while ago. My name is Jim Clyburn. I live at 35 Cody Circle. Been in town for 46 years. I'm not going to rehash all of the stuff that were in the recent letters that were sent, but there are 2 attachments there. And what I did, out of about 60 of the research papers that I've looked at over the past 3 weeks. I picked a couple that were kind of concise that you could read probably in a short period of time. One of them is from the Institute of Local Self-Reliance. It's a 41-year-old organization based in Minneapolis, Portland, Maine, and Washington. Their mission is to provide supportive, innovative strategies, working models, and timely research to support strong communities and local economies. Stacy Mitchell, senior researcher, says that community leaders have barely begun to realize the implications of Amazon's growth and other industrial centers as well. Amazon is upending the old age relationship between commerce and place, and with this shift comes significant costs for local economies. Our analysis puts hard numbers to some of those costs. It should spur cities who are courting such warehouses to reconsider. The other one is from Morgan Hill, California Responsible Growth Coalition, and they talk about a lot of stuff in there. I won't go over that. You've got it all in front of you. You've heard it from us all. One of the things that they pointed out there in several other articles is this issue about jobs. I personally witnessed a warehouse that was built about 15 years ago that had several hundred people working in it. It's a medical warehouse by Cardinal Health, which is one of the largest medical distributors in the world. And they have gone down because of automation. It's unbelievable. It's like a ghost town in there. So jobs, it's not there. People start salivating when they hear about new jobs. And those people are low-income people, and they're often given part-time jobs so they don't have to pay benefits. The other thing has to do with the costs that are associated with this to our public works staff, more trucks, more people. They talk about sewers, which we haven't talked about much. And they also talk about police cost, fire cost, all of that going up as it grows. So I think that I will just underscore my support for Kathy Kerrigan's application. I think we owe it to each other to do this. Do the right thing. Do no harm. So we're supporting you. We recognize the tremendous amount of work and stuff, the work you've been through over all this, and we appreciate that. I thank you.
Thank you for all your input. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Please step forward. John?
Hi, John Holizak, Cody Circle.
John, how much time you feel you need?
About 3 minutes. I only actually have 1.5 charts, and
Okay.
then
Fair enough.
should be a PowerPoint there. Steve?
If I may, to the audience, could I have a show of hands of everybody who would like to speak tonight or intends to speak? If you could raise them nice and high. Okay, so I'm seeing probably another 8 people. You know, the intention is 3 minutes, but if we can get it through without doing the limit, I'd rather not cut anybody off and make them come up later. So I'm going to ask for a little discretion on the part of the chair if somebody runs over.
It could be the chip. try. All right, hey, we're just going to work off the handoff, okay? So this talk is actually split with somebody I just met this week, Jesse Giamarina. We haven't met yet. And basically, commissioners, if you decide to vote in favor and this motion carries for this application, what I'm showing on the second page is my sort of commitment to you. Now, I realize some of you may vote against this just on this basis, but each of these subject areas is something that I've done a pretty deep dive on over the last 9 months, and I will make a commitment to come here every 3 or 4 weeks and give you a 5-minute mini dissertation plus a supporting reference or two on each of these. So I'm not going to do a deep dive tonight. Buffer requirements and use limitations where residential meets industrial, already mentioned, but how do other towns address these? Okay, I'm willing to do some footwork here. Construction noise abatement regulations. Larger towns and cities have these things. As the town contemplates more and more development and large-scale development getting close to residential, it's something you really have to think and plan about and regulate. High cube warehouse trends. There's one in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania that's 110 feet tall. I realize we have regulations right now that say 40 feet, and I've also seen developers with enough lawyers get past anything. Other Connecticut towns are coming up with approaches to these warehouses. Just a quick Google search showed that Newtown is actually requiring a special exception for all warehouses. So that was kind of interesting, and there's probably more. Windsor, I'm told, is drafting language for a special exception for all warehouses. Well, they're right across the river. If they do that, it may force more development here. Noise regulations. I've spent a lot of time reviewing South Windsor's planning and zoning regulations, and it would be nice if the noise protections afforded to the gateway zone are afforded to all the residents. And we can come back and talk about that, and sound is something I've worked in, noise attenuation, so I could maybe help with writing something there. Finally, as already mentioned, the South Windsor Wetlands Regulations were last updated almost 22 years ago. They are missing important changes in state law. That was something I learned over the last 9 months or so in talking to a lot of different experts and having a lot of people look at different things. I will try. That particular board is a little bit hostile. Anyway, on the second page, and I'm going to hand this over to Jesse here real quickly. Just this past week, there was a fire at a distribution center near Indianapolis. The building took 2 days to extinguish. One of the walls collapsed on it. It was a Walmart distribution center and fulfillment center, and it was full of a lot of cardboard. They don't know what the cause of the fire was yet, but the whole thing burned. You can see on the picture on the left, I actually got a separate aerial map. I looked. Luckily, the two housing developments that were nearby were about 3/4 of a mile away, but people were finding chunks of ash up to 7 miles away, as big as your fist. So if you're interested in this, you can view some of the videos here. WRTV in Indianapolis did a really comprehensive story on it. And I think that's a good way to transition to Jesse, who has some specific expertise in this area.
Hello, Commissioners. When I actually had gotten an email about...
Jesse, if you could,
I'm sorry. Yep.
you introduced yourself already. If you could provide your address.
Oh, sorry. Jesse Giamarino, 139 Judy Lane.
Thank you.
This week when I had gotten group notice about this fire, oh, where I got it, it kind of reminded me, I've got 32 years experience in construction. I'm a master electrician. I do fire alarm systems. I work with a lot of these large warehouses myself. And one of the things that I had noticed, and it kind of brought to my concern with a fire like this, is the fact that newer warehouses, at what point does the fire protection system actually get brought in? And from my experience, I know that usually the architects do a design for the building for the owner, and they do the site and civil plans, things like that. And then after things are approved, then they go to the next point where they bring in your MEP, your mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection contractors to actually design everything based on current codes. And my concern is basically that some of these really large mega warehouses, depending on what the actual spec warehouse is, whether or not there's going to be adequate fire protection for that. I did write a letter in to the commission about this, but I wanted to expand on it more. About 10 years ago, I did a tire rack, and anybody knows anything with tires, that once you light all these tires on fire, they'll burn forever and they'll never go out. So we actually had an extra large water tower there with a external diesel pump house. So that way, make sure to be able to try to put these buildings out. And I know from the newer warehouses going around in town that they also have similar facilities like these. And my concern was with the 25 Talbot Lane and how tight the quarters were in there for the parking and everything else, that this was not even part of the consideration or not. And whether or not the MDC actually even has adequate water supply in order to sprinkle a big building of this size. So it was worth mentioning doing a moratorium period, if that could be investigated, and whether or not new applicants would have to bring proof that they actually coordinated with the MDC, and whether or not they would actually need a specific fire suppression system that could adequately put that out without burning down an entire neighborhood in the process too. Instead of having a unknown facility where you don't know who's moving in, whatever the case is, that it behooves the property owner to be responsible for that, and that way the rest of the town and the can feel comfortable with that, even considering the size of our fire department and some of these other issues. So if the commission can consider that as part of the moratorium, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Young lady in the front row.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Virginia McCrow, 1828 Main Street. And I would like to speak in favor of Kathy Kerrigan's proposed moratorium on construction warehouses and distribution centers in South Windsor. As some of you may know, I retired last year after over 20 years as chair of the Historic District Commission in town. I did not grow up in South Windsor, but when I moved here, I felt very fortunate that my family and I had found a house on Main Street within the Historic District. It is a treasure, as are the views of the meadows and the spectacular collection of historic houses that surround us. But I will be honest, I fear for the continued viability of the houses on the northern section of Main Street near the intersection of Sullivan Avenue. Within the last 10 years, actually 11 years, I suppose, 4 major distribution centers and 1 rejuvenated trucking company have exploded the number of trucks emptying onto Sullivan Avenue and into the intersection with Route 5. The noise and pollution from the army of trucks, day and night, flowing onto and off from Sullivan Avenue is constant. The revving up and jake braking with loud thwapping sounds that reverberate through the air from semis and trucks large and small invade our residential neighborhood. My concern is that those potentially interested in living in one of these beautiful houses will not be willing to endure these invasions. Will we then have to watch our heritage in this section of town, unique throughout the state, fall into disrepair and neglect for lack of private ownership? Most residents of antique houses view themselves not as owners, but as caretakers. My husband and I have only been responsible for roughly the last 40 years of the our house's 232-year existence. I hope that in the future, another family will enjoy its pleasures and idiosyncrasies. I endorse the idea of taking a pause in the rush to develop our empty parcels of land to evaluate what are the places that are of most value to us, aesthetically, historically, and recreationally, the places that we want to protect, and then to look at what can be done through zoning to achieve that goal. Lastly, I want to thank and congratulate the Planning and Zoning Commission for their commitment, time, and courage in making the decisions they do, especially recently. I also salute the residents near the Talbot Lane project for their comprehensive research and perseverance. And I also want to thank Kathy Kerrigan for her research and presentation this evening, which was also comprehensive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of the application? Please step forward. Ginny, you signed in, right? Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. Steve Gretsch, 155 Judy Lane. Didn't bring any notes, so short and sweet. I'd just like to ask that the 25 Talbot applications, and I'm in support of the moratorium, the 25 Talbot applications be used as exhibits for this application as well. I think it's a textbook example of why this needs to go through as a moratorium. And that's basically all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak tonight?
Good evening, Chairman Pasakonis,
Good evening.
Council. Derek Butler, 596 Governor's Highway. Real quick, we'll keep it short. I just have a little bit of information for you. As the issues become greater with the global supply chain, it's going to make demand for these type of sites and warehouses more prevalent, right? So I did call around. I called last week. I talked to town planner Windsor, Eric Bears, I believe you know Eric Bears. And he told me that they are working on a special application and acceptance process for not just terminals, but for all warehouses, distribution centers. They've had major public concern because they've been flooded as well, and they're trying to get a handle on it. So it's on his desk. He's working on it. Sounded like within weeks they're going to have the situation changed. And my concern was if we wait, you know, they've got a massive influx there, and as soon as they start to control it on that side of the river, we may not have many applications pending now, but there's a chance that many more will be coming. So I think that the time is right. So that's all I had. Thank you for your service.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Please step forward. Gentleman in the back. Is it Richard?
Rich Delay, 95 Cody Circle. First, I'd just like to thank Kathy for her articulate and heartfelt presentation. That was amazing. I just want to say that it's apparent to everyone that this commission has put an extraordinarily amount of time and effort in their service to the public. This is not going to notice by the community, and it is deeply appreciated. I can't imagine many things in South Windsor's 177-year history that has been more definitively established than the need for a warehouse moratorium to overhaul the current regulations that do not adequately shield the public from the intense harshness from the modern mega warehouses or the amorality of those who might profit from them. I won't rehash what has already been documented, but I would like to just make one point to demonstrate the regulations' outdatedness. Section 10.2, interpretation of other terms in the zoning regulation lists 4 references that shall be used to determine the precise meaning of all terms, phrases, and words beyond the 142 that are expressly defined in the regulation. The second book on that list is the, quote, New Illustrated Book of Development Definitions from the Center of Urban Policy Research, unquote, which was published in 1993. The authors published other versions of the book in 2004 and 2007, how they all went by different titles and were not just edition changes. The current regulation's explicit use of a title only published in 1993, in a way, carbon dates much of the regulations to an era of commerce and construction completely different from the unimaginable massive scale and scope of the modern mega warehouses. The New Illustrated Book of Development Definitions was published before Amazon was even founded in 1994. The moratorium needs to be passed tonight, allowing for more robust regulations to be put into place and the establishment, the permanent establishment of all warehouses and distribution centers in South Windsor to be special exceptions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Please raise your, Mr. Wenzel.
Good evening. When Kathy Kerrigan said that she'd lived here for 45 years, I did the math and realized I'd lived here for 45 years. 45 years ago, I moved to South Windsor with my prized Appaloosa horse and set up residence on Governor's Highway. As I drive into town over and over recently, I'm struck, for instance, when you reach Sylvan Avenue, that one of the prime entrances to the town has a windowless warehouse. That we've gone from.
Excuse me, Tim, could you just identify yourself for the record?
I'm sorry, I thought you identified me, sorry. Tim Wenzel, 630 Governor's Highway.
Thank you.
So I think in your review of the regulations, placement is important as well. I mean, if our entrance to our town is a windowless warehouse, it says something about it. We have a nice stone wall if you come in the other entrance to town, and then you reach a similar kind of thing. Maybe not quite as bland as that one is, but to go from coming into town and seeing farm fields or farm buildings or the character of town, to coming in and just seeing these buildings that have no character and nothing added to it other than perhaps taxes and jobs, which are important, and I understand, but part of the purpose of the planning part of your function really is to look at where things occur too, and I really think that some of the placement of these facilities has been a shame because you can't get that back now, and you can't get back the fact that you're looking at, in some cases, characterless buildings. When I was on the commission, I remember that we went to a tour to Simsbury, where in their regulations, they didn't allow metal buildings. So everything had to be brick or wood or different things like that. And I pushed hard for us to look at regulations like that, that not only regulated the use of buildings, but the character and style of buildings. And I think that that's one of the hardest parts of your function. Like even here, you look across the street, there's a building that has character, but it doesn't fit the character of, say, these buildings of the town and the library. And so that as you go about this, and by taking a year to look at this, to look at some obvious flaws, I think, that we've pointed out over these last 2 applications with regard to setbacks in particular. A setback between 2 industrial buildings is quite different than a setback between many types of industrial buildings and houses. I drove through Summers recently, and they have a lot of new commercial development that's near houses, but it doesn't look like commercial development. I remember years ago pointing out that in Burlington, Vermont, McDonald's can't have big arch signs, and they have to fit in, and they look like almost like a house or a Sturbridge Village kind of thing. And so that I think as you get, by being able to take a year, it will give you the opportunity to look at some of these regulations in a more holistic point of view. And I think I've exceeded my 3 minutes. I'll sit down. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all of your hard work.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak in favor of this application? Please step forward. Anyone? Hearing and seeing none, is there anyone who would like to speak against this text amendment? Please step forward.
Good evening, members of the commission. My name is Evan Seaman. I'm a lawyer at Robinson & Cole, 280 Trumbull Street in Hartford, and I represent a party with an interest in property in town. And my comments are fairly brief this evening. They're just procedural in nature, and this is an application for a zoning text amendment. That's how it was submitted, that's how it was filed, that's how it was noticed, and that's how it's been presented this evening. The reason this is important is because Section 8-3 of the general statutes requires that the actual text of the proposed regulation be made available and on file in the office of the town clerk at least 10 days before the hearing. This past Thursday, I actually visited the town clerk's office and the proposed text was not available. Nothing related to the application was available. I was referred to planning and zoning and discovered that at that point in time, the text had not actually been drafted yet. The applicant had not actually drafted, and she did not submit text for her application. So for that reason, this evening, the commission can't actually take action on the application. We've heard the presentation this evening, but legally it can't take action. We look forward to reviewing the text when it's made available. But until then, and until it's made available in the town clerk's office 10 days before the hearing, there's nothing that the commission can do, unfortunately.
I'm a little confused because it was filed in the clerk's office, so I don't know why you weren't able to obtain it. What was submitted was language by Ms. Kerrigan as part of the application, which would have been on file in our office. So did you come up to the planning department and say that too?
Yes.
So did you get a copy of our application that was online too?
I
And you don't agree that the language she submitted is text language?
I do not.
Okay, because I conferred with our town attorney. I sent her the application, and I sent her the language I was suggesting, which would be to add it to the section, similar language. We certainly could file this language that I have tweaked to represent what Ms. Kerrigan offered as the official language, and file that. The town attorney did indicate she thought it was appropriate language. I did let her know that you were looking to move forward with it, but again, I don't want to create a procedural issue. If that would be satisfactory to the attorney, that would be something I'd suggest the commission doing. Essentially, we took the language Ms. Kerrigan offered and turned it into a section of the regulations.
So when I visited planning and zoning on Thursday, I was told that the language was still in the process of being drafted. So there was nothing that I was provided, nothing available in the office of the town clerk. And those are the basis of my comments this evening. I have nothing further with respect to the substance of the application at all. My comments are just procedural in nature.
Okay, thank you very much. Michelle, just on that, we did submit to CROG also,
Yeah,
correct?
we submitted to CROG, and it was filed in the clerk's office. The file's in the town clerk's office. I don't know who he spoke to in the town clerk's office. I mean, it was filed, stamped in. The language has been out on the website for 2 months. The application that was submitted, on the back side of the language, it talks about what was the proposed language is. It didn't have a section reference, no, but the language is that. Again, the commission can do what it wants, but if you want to file that particular, I have a copy tonight I could offer to the commission to look at. If you want me to put that on file, or if you want, how you want to handle it, it's up to you.
Okay.
I don't really want to create a procedural problem. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to do that, if you have someone questioning the procedure without
Yeah,
the town
and-
attorney here to, again, it has been reviewed with her, but I don't have her here to confer.
Yeah, and maybe at some point we can take a break and give her a call and see if she's available? Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding this application, either for or against? Hearing and seeing none, we will take a 10-minute recess, and then we will open our meeting back up. So what time we got now? 8:26. So 8:36 we'll come back. Thank you. Okay, the meeting is back in session. I'm going to turn to Commissioner Wagner.
Okay, so we just heard the issue that maybe this was not properly filed or was certainly ambiguous. So we now have some slightly modified wording. There are two changes. One, we're going to identify the section number. Otherwise, we're pretty much keeping the wording that Ms. Kerrigan provided. But in addition, personally, I would like to see this expanded to include freight terminals, which is another line in our use table. So someone comes in and wants to do a freight terminal, that ought to be given the same review as a warehouse, other types of warehouses. So because we have one line in our use table, which is warehouse distribution centers, and one line in our use table, which is freight terminals, I've added that word, and that's going to require us to refile.
We'll re-advertise.
Re-advertise, I mean, yeah.
Correct, yeah.
So here's the new wording.
So just to clarify, in my report, I mentioned that part of my work on this was to give you a section similar to what we did with the other moratorium. So that is the paper that Mr. Wagner is going to read from tonight, is my proposed section and the wording that we had. So we'll put that on the record. That was what was filed in the land records.
Okay. So this is add section 1.5 moratorium on new warehouses and distribution centers to Article 1 introduction/districts. The Planning and Zoning Commission hereby declares an immediate moratorium on all applications for and approval of new warehouse distribution centers and freight terminals throughout the town, so the Commission can pause to fairly assess and revise its regulations in keeping with the goals in the town's plan for conservation and development to address the impacts of new warehouse distribution centers and freight terminals. Items to be reviewed include but not limited to restrictions on the size of new buildings, acreage, square feet, restrictions on bundling adjacent properties for development, enhanced buffers for residential areas abutting both commercial and industrial lands, more stringent visual and sound barrier requirements for new developments, a review of and possible upgrade to current traffic and noise standards adopted through state statutes and their application to trucks and trucking companies, clear definition of warehouses, distribution facilities, and freight terminals, quality state-of-the-art traffic and noise studies provided by objective third parties, current best practices for noise abatement reduction. The expiration date of this moratorium shall not exceed 12 months from the effective date of adoption unless extended by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and it will have a specific date when it expires based on when it becomes effective. Or this reads April 10, 2023.
That would not be part of the text amendment proposal.
How are we getting to commissioner comments or questions or what?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay. First of all, there was mention of a list of signatures. Is there an actual petition, or is that just Ms. Kerrigan's report of emails and things that she has? Yeah.
Please step forward to the podium.
Yeah.
Do I have to introduce myself again?
Please.
Kathy Kerrigan. The petition that I mentioned was an electronic petition, an online petition that I sent out in November just to see if there was an appetite in the community to have some sort of a moratorium placed. I've got the wording for it. I brought some copies of it with me. And within 72, we sent it out to a handful of people and said, pass it on. I'm not even on social media. And within 72 hours, we had 662 people put their names down in support of a moratorium.
Okay, I appreciate that.
I didn't do anything with it because it's not a legal, it's not a legal document. I think you need to get written signatures from people for that.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that was in fact the situation, rather than there is a formal petition process which you weren't using, and that's fine. Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, I got that.
I think we just covered one of my comments. I look at our job as, and you may have another seat again. I'm sure somebody else will have a question for you. Part of our job is just to judge applications with respect to our own regulations, and that comes up when we do a site plan review, for example. But we're also elected officials, and we're setting policies, and we have to set them in the best interest of the town. We have to reflect the views of our residents as to the direction of the town's economic development. How do our residents want to see the economic development go forward? We have found through past experience that state and local noise ordinance and laws are ineffective, especially dealing with warehouses. Noise, I wanted to mention, because when Ginny McCrow came up, it reminded me of a conversation I had while I was campaigning. I was standing there in the north end of Main Street trying to have a conversation with one of your neighbors and could barely hear each other talk. There was so much noise coming from Route 5. Now, how much of that was due to the new warehouses? Very impossible to tell. And how much was due to people with souped up hot rod cars? There was certainly some of that. But the noise is a really, really significant issue, and it's impossible to control with regulation right now. State and local idling ordinances and laws are also pretty much ineffective for a lot of the reasons that have been brought before this commission before. Even the traffic restrictions are unenforceable. You know, I thought it was interesting, the subject of fire protection. I didn't spend any time at sea myself, but I know that the Navy's ships have compartments so fire doesn't spread, and we all went to firefighting school and learned how to put a fire out in a compartment. You don't have that in a big warehouse. You just have one big space, so I appreciated the input on fire control. So that's pretty much it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Is there any other commissioners? Commissioner Cavagnero?
Yes. So before this meeting, I typed up a report. It was sort of research I'd done on my own. I thought it would be beneficial for the commission here to hear sort of what I found. I was curious on what other towns, municipalities around the country have done on moratoriums regarding warehouses, distribution centers. So I typed up this 2-page report. I'll just read through it and I can talk about it afterwards. The purpose of this report I have conducted is to remind our commission of what other municipalities in our country have done in terms of establishing moratoriums on warehouses and or distribution centers. I also typed this a few days ago, so it doesn't include freight terminals. South Windsor is not alone in the expansion of warehouses, and we have the chance to vote on language that can help give our staff breathing room to analyze what language needs to be changed in our regulations. Over the last 2 decades, South Windsor has gone through changes, allowing a plethora of warehouses and distribution centers to populate our streets, ones that we all share together as neighbors. Background on this, it's important to note that communities across the country with similar issues with the regulations have turned to establishing moratoriums on warehouses and distribution centers. This is a recent trend seen in the suburban community of Los Angeles, California, also known as the Inland Empire. In Californian cities and towns such as Riverside, Colton, Harappa Valley, and Chino, they have previously implemented 45-day moratoriums on the construction of warehouses. San Bernardino, Paris, and Redlands have recently voted on 45-day warehouse moratoriums. However, those proposals have failed through their respective city councils. Colton, California is actually an interesting case that suggests a 45-day moratorium may be too short. The city acted on a 45-day moratorium on May 3rd, 2021. However, they voted to extend it for 10 months and 15 days after the first 45 days expired, which adds up to a full year. Expired because more time was needed to draft and craft regulations to help satisfy the shortcomings of their regulations. In our own state, Wallingford, Connecticut was looking to accept a proposal enacting a moratorium just a few months ago to protect the Watershed Protection District in their own town. That moratorium proposal contained language that cited warehouses and manufacturing development as an area for the moratorium to include. Norwalk and Milford also went through similar moratoriums almost a couple of years ago that included the language of self-storage development. These moratorium intentions are similar to what application 22-03 is proposing. in South Windsor. To address the impacts of warehouses, distribution centers, I'll add in freight terminals, truck storage yards, truck traffic, and air quality in our community. The impact that warehouses have in our community is generally noted that when warehouses are developed in clusters, they can serve as a serious health concern for citizens around said neighborhood. I guess you could say we have our own cluster, having all of our warehouses and developed on the western side of the town near John Fitch Boulevard, making it a possibility of concern for those citizens living in neighborhoods close to these warehouses. So the quick conclusion is just a quick report. When Colton, California passed their warehouse moratorium, they implemented an ad hoc committee tasked with setting forth recommendations on how to tackle community concerns on warehouses and distribution centers. Some recommendations that the ad hoc committee made were, and I'll quote, making zone code amendments requiring health risk assessments for facilities that attract over 150 truck trips a day and ensuring facilities are not placed within 1,000 feet of sensitive areas as required by state law. I cited an article there that is from California. Of course, not all these would be feasible in our case, but there are some ideas to shed light on, as we approach this moratorium, of what could happen. The increase of warehouses in South Windsor has been recognizable over the last several years, welcoming new developments, as mentioned today, such as Coca-Cola, Home Depot, and Amazon facilities right off of Ellington Road. With more development to potentially occur in this portion of South Windsor, it makes sense for a one-year moratorium on the construction of warehouses and distribution centers, and I'll again add in freight terminals, to ensure the regulations are protecting citizens' best interest to inhabit land in our community. And that is all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any other commissioners? Commissioner Bernstein?
So this text amendment that we're going to deliberate on, there's something that kind of jumps out at me. In the document, we are stating that we need clear definitions of warehouse distribution facilities and freight terminals. And up top, the title of the document is Moratorium on New Warehouses, Distribution Centers, and Freight Terminals. But we haven't identified what they really mean. So I guess I'm looking at this as like, how can someone game the system? So if someone puts in an application, says, oh, I'm not putting up a new warehouse or a distribution center, I'm putting up a big box. So I'm just wondering if there's some wiggle room here in how this is framed up, and maybe it should be something along the lines of how it's used, such as moratorium on facilities intended for warehousing, distribution centers, and freight terminals. Basically, I'm throwing a what if out there and wondering if we've covered our bases and if there's a way for, someone to kind of, because we're admitting that these things don't have clear definitions in the document.
Well, part of our diligent work will be to put clear definitions in. But I'm understanding what you're saying.
Yeah, aren't we going to vote on this tonight, though?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
If I could just offer a comment, in your regulations, in your use table, you have warehouse distribution facilities, you have freight terminals as separate items, right? So when someone's coming in to do a use, one of the things they have to do is find their use in the use table. If they don't find their use, there's a clause that says any other similar use as deemed by the commission to be similar. So if someone were to propose something that wasn't in the use table, they came to you and it was similar to a distribution facility, well, you have a moratorium on, then you wouldn't allow it. So
Okay.
that may be one way you get at it. We always go back to the use table and what's allowed in the use table.
All right, so what I think I'm hearing you say is the regulation boxes people into the use.
You have to be a permitted use in the zone you're in, yes.
Okay. Great, thanks. So with something like this, I'm always looking for best practices, and so between Commissioner Cavaliero's document and what John had presented, I see 5 towns: Newtown, Windsor, Wallingford, Norfolk, and Milford. Do we know, Michelle, you might be the closest to it, or someone who's dealing with CROG, do we know if there is a best practice, if one of these towns or some other town in Connecticut may have, maybe further along and done something that we could use as a best practice?
I don't know, but we certainly can research that kind of information. Sure.
Okay. Well, CROG would be part of that. The only other thing that I guess I want to comment on is I've been working on a little bit of a parallel path as Ms. Kerrigan. She is seeking a pause. When we got into the previous applications on Talbot Lane, I realized that there might be additional situations in town that might present a similar situation, and my biggest concern was the possibility of these centers near residential areas. So I've been working with Michelle, and what I discovered is something along the lines of 20 years ago, there was a zone that went away that essentially served as a buffer between industrial and residential. So I've just started the process of working with Michelle. That might be a possible solution to go down that road. But clearly, first is the moratorium and then is the solution. So, but work has begun. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other commissioners that would like to speak? Commissioner Wagner?
One tiny little thing, I was actually looking at our use table, and it talks about truck and freight terminals. So that ought to be the language we use here.
We use the exact language in the.
It also says warehouses and distribution centers.
Distribution
So
centers, yeah.
use the language in the table.
Okay. Commissioners, anyone else have anything? Is anything else from staff?
No, so just so we're clear, we're going to hold the public hearing open. Are we looking at the April 5th date or the April 12th? April 5th would be the earliest to have a 10-day filing and to do a legal notice again.
That gives us our 10 days?
Yeah, we'll put a legal notice, yeah,
Okay.
every 2 weeks.
Yeah. April 5th works?
Okay, the only caveat I'm going to make is we have to make sure we have the availability of this room. I know WPCA meets that night. You would know that.
Sorry?
WPCA does meet that night, I believe, in the Madden room.
I think we do.
Yeah,
Let me just
so
check.
we should have availability of this room. We'll have to just verify that.
Yeah, we meet in the Madden room, yeah.
With a lot of budget meetings, I just want to
Let me just double check on my phone here, okay? Yeah, we do meet in the Madden room, unless we're kicked out by the town council or something.
Okay, so then this room hopefully is available.
Okay. So, if,
Actually, not once the public hearing is open. We don't need any extension. We have 35 days to close the public hearing, so we're all set. But thank you.
okay. Okay, so I would need a motion to continue the public hearing to April 5th.
I move we continue the public hearing to April 5th.
Okay, we have a
Second.
motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. 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 Those opposed? Motion passes. We are continued. Okay, so that concludes the public hearing. We do have other business we have to do, so if you could leave orderly and quietly, we would appreciate it. We'll just take 1 minute here to allow the crowd to leave, and then we will continue the meeting. Please take the conversations out into the hallway. Please take your conversations out into the hallway. Thank you. Okay, we're going to continue with our regular meeting. I'll call the regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning for Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022 to order. Our first item is public participation. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on anything that is not on our agenda tonight? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, we'll move into, we don't have any new business. Bonds, we have bonds. Does everybody have the bonds in front of them?
Yeah, I got it. Yep.
Okay.
Right, so we have a subdivision bond, 20-04P, Chestnut Ridge subdivision, amount of $856,111, reduction of $423,370, and a balance of $432,742.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve that subdivision bond. Michelle, how come half amount? Do you know what the amount represents? I mean, it's not.
It would be work completed to date. So basically, they give us a bunch of quantity estimates, how much linear road, pavement, that kind of stuff, and then it's a spreadsheet. So when they submit in how much they worked, it kind of gets reduced.
So this is basically saying that the infrastructure is about half done over there, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, old business, oh, I'm sorry, we have minutes. I did review the minutes. The only thing I really saw was Derek Butler's name was spelled wrong. If we could spell his name, maybe just a cut and replace on his first name for the whole document. Other than that, commissioners, we can adopt these by consensus with the changes. Agreed?
Yeah, but
Agreed.
can I just say that what a terrific job putting that very complicated meeting into minutes.
Okay, old business, Michelle. Is this on the northern corner? Okay. Okay. Your microphone, young lady.
A change order for the Goddard school application. I do have a new elevation I want to share with you. I sent it to you, Chairman. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. I'm going to send it around. This is basically value engineered, if you will. So I want to just get your input on it. They'd like to move forward with it if you're okay with it, so. Apologize, one copy. This again is the back side of everything you want. They talked about putting in a drop-off area that once they got steel prices and everything, it's really popular. So they're looking to just do some treatment on the facade.
I missed who this is or what this is?
The Goddard School, we'd approved their plan, again, since.
The one that's next to Mountain
Yeah, yeah.
They, now,
It doesn't pop out anymore, so they're just trying to treat the elevation. They did pick up the same rooftop treatment that's in other parts of the complex.
this, to me, looks pretty different in that they hadn't Oh, here's the exterior
Yeah.
area? Okay, and the bollards were,
This was basically popped out before,
okay,
right here.
okay.
It was actually projected outward. Yeah, it was a drop off, yeah. And basically, that's the primary thing that's going away.
I don't see the bollards there.
They're on the site plan. They did
Okay,
stuff on the-
fair enough.
Yeah, that was an approval condition, so they
Okay.
did take care of that.
All right.
So that, look at my list, I made a list. Give me 1 second here.
The top one is.
The only other comment I just wanted to let you know related to the farmer's market, we had been approached by the Recreation. They were going to have vendors there that will have tasting, beer tasting, local vendors. And part of your planning and zoning approval, temporary and conditional permit would be the normal procedure for them to get approval to do that. So since they have a current one, they were looking for permission to be able to do that this summer as part of the current permit they have. They're going to offer, or they're going to have a couple vendors there offering beer tasting, local brewery as part of the farmer's market.
Will they be selling the product to people who happen to
They
like,
would be selling it as well, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not for consumption on site, though.
other
just-
than the
Just
tasting?
You know, a
to take with you.
4-pack or a 6-pack, whatever,
Got it.
they sell it.
And that's all I have at this time.
Okay, awesome. Then that, I believe, concludes our business. We have a motion to adjourn?
One thing first, if I may.
Oh, please.
So, we voted to have a housing moratorium.
Yep.
What's the process for developing the plan to figure out everything that we need to do?
I believe we're going to be discussing that at our April 15th meeting.
Okay.
That is on our agenda,
That's what
right?
we have, the April 15th special meeting. We're actually going to hold it in the Madden Room downstairs. What I hope to start with is Jeff Folger and I have been putting together a little bit of the more recent open space subdivisions and the interior lots, for example. After a general discussion, we could start to look at some of those aspects. I think sometimes seeing things and then seeing what you don't like about them or what you want to change might be a way to approach some of the subdivision aspects of it. So Jeff and I have been putting together some information related to that. So on the 15th, we'll be ready to at least start a discussion with you and get some direction for further development.
Okay.
Good enough.
And one other thing I wanted to mention, I was
Sorry, the
contacted by
19th.
Robert Dickinson, a former resident of South Windsor, and he is offering some language to be included in our regulations and our plan of conservation and development regarding multi-use paths. And it is modeled after the Windsor regulations, and it's a lot of good language. I asked him for your permission to forward it on to you for your opinion, and he was ecstatic, so I'll be sending that to you tomorrow. Okay, Commission, we have a motion and a second to adjourn, or do we yet? No.
Motion we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, do we have a second? Okay, we have a second. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes unanimously. Thank you.